Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank you all for joining me tonight as we do the reading for Chapter 6 from the book we are currently going through. That book is I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. Fantastic book, and starting to get to the spiritual growth part of it, and that is very exciting. The last chapter was about the just a summation of his journey up until he found the Oxford group. And now we are going to dive in to the Oxford group. So the next chapter is called, This Business of the Oxford Group. I am excited to read it. And next weekend, or this upcoming weekend, I will be giving you a review of this chapter. So this is the printing that I am reading from. We can get it in focus there. Get my face out of the way. It's always a challenge. There it is. And then this is an original printing from 1934. This is just a reprint. It's called Believing in False Gods. I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. You can get that, so you can mark it up if you want to, too. But you can get quite a few copies of this, I believe, around. But let's go ahead and let's get into it. So here we go. This is Chapter 6 of the book I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. Chapter 6. This Business of the Oxford Group. Application. Like that. Among the P's I had turned to in life, it was my pal who came through in the pinch and put me on the track of 5 more P's. The peace, purpose, plenty, progress, and new form of power I am finding in life now. Now, that's a heck of a way to open a chapter. This pal, who was my room and drinking mate in college, had a brother. That brother, 4 or 5 years ago, had run off the track entirely. He had hooked up with some newfangled religion and, as I understood, had become a fanatic. Such a nice fellow, too. My friend and I speculated over our cocktails on the nature of this curious religion, and which the newspapers of the day referred to as Buckmanism. Buchmanism. Its principal attraction, we had heard, was the confession of sins. Rumor had it, moreover, that these confessions were shared by sinners and shamelessly gobbled up by an assortment of mixed guests at a so-called house party. I at once imagined a sort of exotic atmosphere, tiger skin, firelight, and bowls of roses. We tried to picture ourselves in such a session, and there came to mind certain sins that I might tell, and others I certainly would not. We never, however, peeked behind the scenes of any of these orgies until one winter when the Oxford group held a dinner at the Hotel Plaza in New York. My friend's brother did not invite me, which peeved me a bit. If they were trying to interest important people, I felt that I was certainly one of their most likely prospects, and I told my friend I wished his brother would count me in the next time they held a party of that sort. Well, I admit I felt more than a passing curiosity in the movement. I felt that they might have some psychological answer or some other stunt I could use in my book, and when an invitation finally came to attend an Oxford group house party at Briarcliff Lodge, New York, I was more than willing to run up there for the weekend. Not knowing what it would be like, my friends and I and another man, spent a couple of hours in a speakeasy, which gave us a rollicking start. We also stole some bottles in our bags and took a few revivers on the way to Briarcliff. By the time we sauntered into the dining room, we were quite perked up, though we soon discovered that among the 600 or so people there assembled, Ours were probably the only fiery breaths. Everybody, however, seemed to be having a wonderful time, and they did not look at all like the anemic, chinless characters I had always associated with religious or non-drinking people. They were astonishingly healthy and vivacious-looking lot, clear of skin, and, what impressed me most, with a remarkably straightforward gaze and a clarity and sparkle to the eye that I had rarely seen before in any company. The company itself, I found, was made up of people of all kinds from various countries. A Chinese diplomat was there, an army officer from India, an accountant from Holland. The son of a member of parliament dined with the daughter of a pioneer statesman from South Africa. The rector of an Edinburgh church bore the same name and sat at the same table as an ex-leader in the Communist Party in Scotland. A student of the Sorbonne broke bread with a former chaplain of Harvard. An assistant secretary of agriculture, a member of the former retinue of Kaiser Wilhelm, the pastor of a fashionable New York church, a family which had motored all the way from California, an actress, an ex-bootlegger, a banker, a member of the New York Stock Exchange, a stenographer, and a lady doctor where few of the others I happened to meet. Quite a mix. My own dinner companion was an ex-soldier, businessman, and big game hunter from South Africa. I was advertising for the world's foremost manufacturer of firearms at the time, and my company's familiarity with big game rifles formed a common bond between us. It seemed, however, incredible to me that a man of this agreeable personality and two-fisted character did not drink. A lady I once dined with had observed that it seemed to her that all the really nice men drank. I thought so too, and eventually screwed up my courage to ask this fellow why he didn't. He simply said that he did not need it, and that he had something else. During the first evening, to be sure, my friends and I did not gain a very clear idea of that something else might be, of what that something else might be. From the various speakers who took the platform, we judged they seemed to be enjoying what they all described as a new quality of life. In fact, they did seem to have some unusual quality. There was that straightforward clarity of eye that I had noticed. There was a fellowship that had not of the slap-backing order. There was a fellowship that was not of the slapping order. There was a spontaneous sparkle and zest, not of social banter nor alcohol-stimulated wit, but of genuine joy that seemed to well up from inside. They seemed to possess some inner wine, and of the stimulants I knew they had no need. The first man to speak that evening had long been an executive secretary of one of our best-known universities. He was, I could see, an intellectual of the highest type, and said that he had plumbed intellectual depths to the bottom but had found no answer to life, and he had come upon this something, this new quality of life, and had begun to find an answer to all human problems. This man's experience set me thinking. His search had lasted much longer than mine, and he had found, as I had, that the quest was barren of result. Yet he, too, had found something else, a something, whatever it was, that I myself very much wanted to find. A little later in the evening, another educated authority spoke. It was a lady this time. One who had been president of the National Education Association. She had said that as head of this association, she had once welcomed the President of the United States as her guest. She had felt that the pinnacle of her human ambition had been reached, yet now she knew that neither top position in her profession nor education had given her the real answer to life. nor, as she found, had legislation or organization work. Years as a lobbyist in Washington and Albany, and connection with or leadership in some 67 different organizations had proved the futility of human effort along self-determined lines. At many points, her experience coincided with mine. She, too, had that something that I wanted for myself. There had been no tiger skin or roses, no soft lights. There had not even been confession of the things that I called sin. But nothing but a confession of inevitable failure under the old self-assertive waves of living. A declaration of glorious victory, and a declaration of glorious victory in this new God-empowered way of life. I went to bed that night quite sober, with much to think about. I was still thinking the next morning and attended what these people called a quiet time. They said they were listening to God. I listened as attentively as any of the rest, I thought, but heard nothing. Nothing at all. Gradually, as I attended more quiet time services and witness meetings, however, I began dimly to sense what these people were driving at. They claimed they had gained what I had been trying to gain, a consciousness of the spiritual environment, a direct contact with God. On the afternoon of our arrival, someone showed me an article by the celebrated Michael Pupin, an electrical wizard of Columbia University. Its sense, as I remember it, was that this great electrician believed the power of God to be an actuality, something as real in the universe as the power of electricity. Man, he said, has been able to gain control of his physical environment only by using forces external to himself. He used the power of heat or the power of electricity, without which, let us say, modern travel would be impossible. Man, similarly, Pupin said, would not be able to go anywhere in moral fields or rise in the spiritual environment until he had discovered and applied the infinite power of God in somewhat the same way. The Oxford group, it seemed to me, had discovered that power, and with the dexterity of a spiritual Thomas Edison, were applying it to the business of living. Whew. Finally, I got down to the point of questioning them. You, they said in the answer, believe that there is something going on in space. You, from what you tell us of your book, believe that God has some kind of plan and method for developing the personality or soul of human beings. You, naturally, therefore, believe that it is everyone's duty to enter into consciousness and direct cooperation with that plan, rather than conflict with or kick against what is actually going on in the universe. You believe that people should enter consciously into the scheme of things and deliberately try to grow a soul. And yet you say you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to apply your beliefs. You don't know how to get in touch with God. These indeed were my beliefs, and these indeed were my difficulties. You believe there's a plan, they continued. Did it never occur to you to get in touch with the author of that plan, asking him directly what his plan is and what he wants you to do about it? No, I was forced to admit. Nothing as simple as that ever had occurred to me. I had thought, from casual survey of occult religions, that through a series of initiations, adaptations, or whatever you go through, one might somehow get in touch with a so-called cosmic consciousness, whatever that might be, and I had my own idea of exploring a spiritual environment. But the idea of getting directly in touch with God himself, of asking him questions and getting answers and directions for the conduct of my life, seemed to me an out-and-out absurdity. Yet these people said it could be done. They said they were doing it themselves, and that was what gave them the power to apply beliefs and carry out the plan of God, a power that I did not have. They said, however, that I could have it, just as they did, if I would pay the same price, comply with the same conditions, and go through the same series of exceedingly simple steps. First, they said that I would have to make clean contact, much as in forming an electrical connection. In setting up aerials for the family radio, I had scraped the ends of copper wire often enough to know that to get my contact points clean, they said I would have to face up to my sins. And sin, they defined as anything which came between me and any other person or stood between me and God. Then they said I would have to surrender my will and make it subject to the will of God. I would have to give up entirely the old life of self-assertion, self-determination. There was, in other words, no use in clearing a telephone line to God if I was just going to sit back at my end of the wire and make up my own mind whether or not I wanted to do what he told me. They also said that just as I would not trust a willful child to get with an automobile, God would not trust me with any of his dynamic spiritual power unless he knew that I was going to use it as Jesus Christ would use it, for purposes of absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. Here were posers for me, and I promptly tried to dodge the issue. This, as I found later, is what nearly everybody tries to do. No sooner is a person faced with the challenge of being absolutely honest and owning up to the kind of person he really is, no sooner is he faced with the idea of giving up his own sweet will in life than he ducks hastily for cover and hunts up an alibi of some kind. At precisely this point, for instance, I have heard person after person who has been challenged start to criticize the Oxford group. They've no business to wash their dirty linen in public, says one. I wouldn't share for anything, says another, adding that his or her religion is too sacred to wear upon my sleeve. I know these dodgers by now. I know them well. Particularly regularly are those who protest that there are other ways to find God, such as looking for God in others, through nature, beauty, truth, and goodness, through anything but the ugly necessity of looking oneself in the face and really admitting one's sins to God and man. There are the conservative-minded to whom the entertainment of a new idea of any kind is literally agony. There are those who come to the Oxford group meetings just out of curiosity and form an unjust conclusion from an inadequate contact. There are the misinformed people who do not know what it is all about, and there are those who know only too well what it is about and are afraid to face so radical a change in themselves. All in all, these people who, whatever else they feel, see clearly that the challenge to absolute honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love is something that threatens their complacency in life, and something which is likely to destroy their self-approval. As a psychologist says, we will always stand at bay and fight to the bitter end to retain our self-approval. We, He goes on, deny the accusation against us. We revile the accuser. We argue. We grow hot and red in anger. We bluff. We lie to defend our reputation. I too did all these things, or nearly all of them, when I first felt the challenge of the group. I lied, for instance, by saying that I did not have any sins in particular. I might have had some in my younger days, but not now. Drinking and smoking I did not consider a sin. As for impurity, I would not, of course, like all my actions published, nor would I care to throw my thoughts on a screen where all might read. Tell dirty stories? Yes, funny ones. No harm in that. As for summer escapades with the family away, well, they are not as raw as they used to be and did not worry me at all. When finally it came to my business, social, and amateur theatrical accomplishments, to my opinion of myself, to my brain, and what I secretly considered was intellectual giantism, I felt I had good reason to be proud rather than ashamed. My conversations with the group by now had simmered down to a two-man basis. In the lobby of the hotel, there were, as I have said, no tiger skins or shaded lights. There was no mixed company, not even a public confession. I was talking to one other man who, from his own story, had been as big a reprobate as I. And yet, as I talked, I stuck pretty closely to a rather hand-picked list of sins. I did not want to let him see the really nasty things inside of me, and the things that I was most ashamed of. I did not want to guess what a rotter I had really been and still was. So I wound up by saying that my sins were really not troubling me at all. My real trouble, I glibly lied, was simply confusion, inability to see that what we were living for, inability to solve both the why and the how in life. I also squirmed a bit, both openly and mentally, about that other challenging requirement, to surrender my will. If I promised to do whatever God told me to do, if he could speak to me at all, which I still did not quite believe, he might tell me to do something that I could not or jolly well did not want to do. If he told me to be absolutely honest, for example, that was clearly impossible in the advertising business. At least it would be most embarrassing, highly uncomfortable, and probably unprofitable. God also, I thought, might lead me apart from my family spiritually, geographically, or both. He might start me living on some higher spiritual plane or send me to China as a missionary while leaving my wife and children behind. I developed an unexpected fondness for my wife and children. If they were to be left behind or were on the road to hell, I very nobly would stay behind and go to hell with them. Then, too, I argued to myself, God might tell me to stop drinking and smoking. There were, I knew, no rules. There were, I knew, no rules about anything like this in the Oxford group. You did not have to stop anything when you surrendered your life to God. But after that, God might tell you to stop. And if at any time I was called upon to quit my tobacco and alcohol, there would, I was sure, be no more fun for me in life. I had known before that my difficulty in bungling my plan number 3 lay in not wanting to lead the good life. Here apparently were people who did want to. They, in some way I did not quite understand, got fun out of being moral. They must be different from me, and the good life might, therefore, be all right for them. Probably they had never known any other kind of life, but no, sir, not for me. Not if it came to giving up drinks and smokes. No, sir, not for me. That was the general conclusion I came to after a weekend at Briarcliff. They were an unusual and interesting lot of people, and they had some sound ideas. The quality of life they talked about would be good for quite a lot of other people that I knew, but I was sure that when my own life even I was sure that it would make my own life even more uncomfortable than it was already, and so I did not want it for myself. I wanted something I could not turn to for solace. I wanted something I could turn to for solace, I wanted, in short, to keep on with my cocktails and all my other comforts. And while my pal and I talked the matter over with surprising animation and with much greater agreement than had been usual of late, we also finished up our gin as we drove home that night. What a heck of a chapter. That was awesome. It's pretty phenomenal to read an account of someone's first engagement with the Oxford group of that time, right? And just how they approached everything and how they presented it. I love that. I love that last part where he says the Oxford group didn't tell me to do anything, but that he was scared that God would ask him to stop, and he would have to give things up. And therein lies the rub. So, an incredible chapter. Absolutely loved it. I hope you all enjoyed it too. And I am very much looking forward to doing the review of this chapter. And I appreciate everyone that jumps on and listens to this. I really, really do. I hope y'all are getting something out of this book right along with me. So, thank y'all for joining me, though. And until next time, thanks.